Okay, we're gonna have a quick little talk about Tobi skip. To start with, just gonna get over here any ordinary way, doesn't particularly matter. But once you're up here, our goal is to get roughly here. We want to be on this side of this black line and behind this black line. So we're sort of going for this ceiling tile, roughly speaking. But the thing is, we want our camera to be angled this way, because otherwise the camera, you'd have to move it too much. So we're kind of going in blind, so this will take some muscle memory. You can conserve dash to this, but it might not be convenient for you. The important part is that you tackle off like here or so, because you need to tackle off pretty much all the way off the platform in order to make it to the right spot reliably. If you start like from here, you probably won't get far enough, and if you don't get far enough, then there's a decent chance. Let's see if it actually happens here. Well, in this case, I'm not actually able to get the flower at all. This can also happen. The way this particular flower works seems different from a lot of others, in that the spot you have to be in to activate it is not very obvious. Right now it's invisible, even though we're fairly close to being in range. In fact, we're closer there than we are here, but now it's visible. To actually hit it, we actually have to target a point above the flower itself, and it's possible for the flower to be visible, open, and you can't target it. So I'm not exactly sure how it works. I think the important part is that you're on this half of the room. That half of the room doesn't work, and you have to be relatively high up, and the camera has to be relatively high up. So all of these factors matter. Hopefully you can figure out a good way to get this movement down. Let's see if this works. I don't think it will. Nope. So that's a common mode of failure, where you're not far enough to the right. I'll try and illustrate. So in this case, we were somewhere over here, when we want to be over here, which means that when the flower was pulling us, it was pulling us in this direction, and it was able to slide us out of this ceiling area before we clipped into the ceiling. So to avoid that, we need to be to the right of this black line. So once more, I'd say this is pretty good. Depending on your positioning, it might not be possible to get a good enough camera angle to catch the vine. If you're too far right, then you won't be able to drag the camera out easily, and it won't work. You might be able to mess around with it and make it work, and you'll probably clip in if that works, but it's a bit too inconvenient. So you kind of want to be in this sweet spot, right where I'm at now. Should be good. So then you do a fairly long vine. Generally here we're targeting Ami's back. Usually right under the divine instrument will work just fine. And this looks like it'll work. So what should happen is, yeah, we'll clip in. So you can already see Ami's already clipped in. But we don't want to cut the vine right away because we don't have enough height. So we're going to wait until around here should work. This is pretty forgiving. I'd say there's probably a 5-frame window or so for this to work. We don't want to be too low because we need enough height for this end part that I'm about to show, and we don't want to do it too late because if you wait too late, I'll show you what happens. You get pulled under here, and even if you cut the vine at this point, you end up popping through here because the vine is trying to pull you in this direction towards the flower. So it pulls you into this platform, and then you fall out the bottom because floors and ceilings are not double-sided in Okami. And if that happens, you can usually just drift back onto this platform and you should be fine. But if you can't, then you'll fall down and you'll hit the fight trigger down there, which would be pretty bad. So be careful to avoid that. But this part is pretty easy to avoid. Once you have this vine, the rest of the trick is fairly reliable. It's just a matter of getting the right vine to clip into the ceiling here. Sometimes you'll notice you have to drag the camera upwards in order to get the holy smoke. Exactly the right positioning for this is kind of ambiguous, but I do know that the camera needs to be reasonably high up vertically. Okay, so once again, we were in the right sweet spot. We were behind both black lines, and we're clipped in. So you can see Ami being pulled in at the edge here. I would say this is a good enough position. You can be a bit higher and it'll still work, and I think you can even be a bit lower than this. What we're going to do is we're going to cut the vine. We're going to wait a fraction of a second for Ami to pop up, since she gets a bit of vertical momentum from cutting the vine. And then we're going to tackle to the left. This way Ami will bounce towards the right, but she'll be stuck in the wall. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you can see she bounced into this position. I would say this is actually quite a good sweet spot. And also the camera is inside the wall. This is overall pretty much the ideal scenario, because from inside the wall we can hit the flower and hit Ami with the vine. And what that's going to do is she's going to get pulled up, and then the vine generally tries to pull you in sort of a weird arc. I'd say it's kind of parabolically shaped. So it'll pull you up towards the flower's level first, and then it'll pull you more sideways. And the farther you are away, the more sideways it'll start with. But because we're relatively close to the flower, it'll pull us up first, and then we'll get caught on this gate here, which isn't part of the wall that we're inside. It's a separate object, which means we can still collide with it, even though we're already inside the wall. And then we'll get caught up here, we'll clip back inbound, and the vine will cut itself because it can't pull us through the gate, since the gate is a lot more solid than the ceiling that we just clipped through. If the camera didn't clip through the wall to begin with, like if it was stuck here, what you can do is you can angle the camera like this, hold right on the left analog stick like this. The camera won't clip in right away, but what you can do is you can unbrush and rebrush, and it should clip in fairly reliably. It might actually clip all the way through the wall, and you'll end up stuck on this side, at which point you can't get the flower. But in that case, you can actually do the same thing, but backwards. You angle the camera more parallel to the wall, and then you hold left and you rebrush. And it should eventually get you inside the wall. And if you take too long doing this, you'll fall too low and it won't work. But if you do this correctly, it should work pretty much every time. So that's, I would say, is fairly good execution. Like I said, it is possible to conserve dash to this, but it's kind of annoying to get all the positioning correctly. So more likely than not, you'll just have to do a tackle here, and then you can just run across the bridge, and you're good. I'm going to reset here, so we can continue talking about this. I'll see if I can show another failure mode, because, like I said, there's multiple ways to fail this. Some worse than others. Okay. When you're going past this fight trigger, the trigger shape is sort of like this, in the sense that you can approach it from a fairly wide space in this direction, but you need to turn left immediately, or else you'll hit the trigger like here. So you need to like hug this corner pretty much, like so, because if you go a bit too far right here, you'll just hit the fight trigger. Then we want to get up here a bit to the right of where we start off, because this platform is a bit to the right of this platform, or a bit to the left from this perspective. When you get up here, one thing you might find, when I was showing this in the original video, I just did this kind of tackle jump, and you'll see the camera like snaps behind Ami when you do this. I don't know exactly why this happens, but it's some weird property of this particular platform. If you make it up here with your dash conserved, you can do a jump and then do a tackle here, and you'll get a dash restore into a tackle, and then you do the tackle jump jump, and that should work. And that's, I'd say, the most reliable way of conserving dash through this. You can also, instead of doing the jump dash restore, do a jump tackle, but then the timing for getting the tackle off the platform is a bit more strict. So, you know, make do with, based on your positioning. Like from here, you could probably do a tackle jump and it would be fine. Anyway, I want to see if I can get the other main mode of failure here. see, that might work. No, okay, so that, there again, I was too far to the left, so I got pulled to the side of the wall. Here I'm fairly far to the right, but I'm not behind this line here. So if I'm correct, this should show the failure condition I'm interested in. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that the flower is invisible, but I can still vine to it. It's just another weird property of this flower. I think there's like a real flower and an invisible flower or something. So here's what I wanted to show. You'll see Ami is getting stuck here, but she doesn't clip in. And that's just because she doesn't have enough speed. She does have enough speed to get caught on some piece of collision up there. I don't fully understand how the collision works there. But not enough speed to actually clip through, so she just gets stuck and then the vine snaps. And that's just because you're not far enough from the flower, so it doesn't pull you in at high enough speed. Because the farther you are, the higher the speed it starts with. So this should work. So there you see I had to rebrush actually a couple times to force the camera through the wall. But I was just holding right on the left analog stick the whole time. And this should work. If you're too low, or if you're not all the way, like, if Ami's not poking through this wall like she was there, if she's like in the middle, or if she's poking out the other wall, when you do this last vine, instead of getting stuck under this gate, she'll just get pulled all the way through, and you'll end up on that side under the flower, at which point you just have to reset the trick. It's pretty easy to just try it again, but it does lose a fair amount of time, and this doesn't save terribly much time to begin with, so you would like to avoid that.
Okami.
So we'll probably do a couple more, see if I can show some of the other modes of failure with this trick. Turn left. So here we use outer camera. Outer camera is pretty important for this. Yeah, that's one way you can mess up the dash restore. If you tackle too late, you'll just do an air tackle. So be careful to avoid that. Anyway, like I was saying, you want to do the vine with outer camera because, well, inner camera will work, but then the camera will behave sort of erratically when you actually get pulled through the wall. One thing you'll notice there is I noticed I wasn't far enough to the left of, or I was to the left of this line when I first brushed, so I rebrushed while holding right on the analog stick, which gave Ami enough time to turn to the right. And this is a way you can sort of fix setups that are a little bit off. It won't work every time, but it's fairly reliable. Here I want to show this. Once again, okay, not exactly what I wanted to show, but once again you can see I got pulled into the platform. You can see this is one of those cases where the thing doesn't want to behave. In these cases, sometimes you can fix it by rebrushing. I'm not sure exactly the right conditions for it. Okay, so here I got caught on something. So I fell too low before Ami started to poke through. So now I'm like right here. If I go any lower, I'll fall through. Let's see what happens if I try to vine here. I'm not even sure I can catch the flower at this point. It doesn't seem like I can. So in this case, I'm going to fall through. You might be able to avoid the fight trigger if that happens. But there's not much you can do about it. Just, you know, don't mess up. Okay, so here's what I wanted to show. It's possible that you'll end up clipping through if you tackle too early. And you'll end up on this side of the wall, at which point you just have to reset. It's the same as, you know, when you do the second vine, just falling inbounds again. So try to avoid that. Sometimes it can get pretty janky trying to catch this vine. But I would say this is pretty perfect positioning, and it works quite reliably. I should mention, you need 3 ink pots to do this, obviously, because you do vine cut, or vine power slash vine. So if you start it with 2 ink pots or less, you'll inevitably fail. You would ideally like to have 4 full ink pots when you start, so that you don't end up inkless at the end and can, you know, tackle to restore your dash. That's pretty much all I wanted to say. Good luck.